as a child, I went through severe childhood trauma with my stepdad being very abusive. I watched him, beat my mom pretty much every day of my life and beat me and my brothers. But yeah, I went through all that. I ended up being 500 pounds, lost 258 pounds on The Biggest Loser, completely changed and saved my life.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
Good morning, Insurance Syndicate Group. It is that time. It is October 3rd, and it is 10:30 a.m. and time for another episode of Ask the Experts. And I'm incredibly excited about this episode because we have a very special guest on today. He is a country music artist signed by Toby Keith. When he was 22 years old, he spent 4 years on the Big Dog Daddy Tour. And Bigg Vinny had five top 40 hit Billboard songs with his band Trailer Choir. And then in 2011, he was a Final Four contestant on the hit TV show The Biggest Loser, where he lost 258 pounds. Talk about commitment. And now he's the owner of the Buffalo River Resort. Most important, he is a proud husband and father to his amazing family, and somebody I'm proud to call my good friend. Welcome to the show, Bigg Vinny. We are excited to have you on today, my friend.
I'm excited to be here and honored, that y'all would want to bring me on the show and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully I can add some value to people's lives today. That's one of my goals every day that I put on myself, is to make sure I'm adding good into this world, adding, something positive to people's lives. I think there's so many, obviously, crazy things going on in the world right now that if I can add a little bit of love, a little bit of positivity and light to people's life, then that's a good thing for me. So, and a good thing for them, hopefully.
No, I love it, brother. And before we get into questions today, maybe tell everybody, we gave you the intro, but tell everybody a little bit more about like who you are and really what, part of your story that got you to where you are today, impacting so many lives.
Yeah, it's crazy. People ask me all the time, like, how are you so positive and how are you so happy with all you've been through? So as a child, I went through severe childhood trauma with my stepdad being very abusive. I watched him, beat my mom pretty much every day of my life and beat me and my brothers. I watched my mom put a gun to her head and pull the trigger whenever I was 10 years old. She lived through that and then went on to try and commit suicide probably 20 more times in my life. And, I used to kind of have this victim mentality of, man, all this bad stuff happened and why is it all happening to me and all this? And I'm a big Bible believer, and I realize that, God, only puts stuff on you that he knows you can actually handle and you can get through. And it's uniquely equipped me to help people in their life to be able to overcome those tragic moments and those hard things. I actually worked with a guy yesterday, and he said to me, he's like, man, I shouldn't be complaining because I know I'm stressed out right now. He owns a massive insurance company here in Nashville called IGA Insurance. He goes, I know I shouldn't be stressed out because there's so many people that have it so much worse than me. And I had to remind him that even though people have it worse than you, doesn't negate your stresses in your life. It doesn't mean that you don't have things you have to deal with and things that you have to overcome. So, God didn't tell us to not worry about ourselves because we were worried about other people. We're not supposed to worry because we're not supposed to worry. But that doesn't mean that we can't pray, that we can't ask for stuff. It says you have not because you ask not. So I believe in this world, God has put me in a specific place, and all these things that I went through as a young man gave me the opportunity to be a better, adult and to hopefully help other people that are going through those situations and realize that just because your story is bad right now doesn't mean it's got to be bad 20 years from now or 5 years from now or even tomorrow. It's up to you to start making something better and something different. And but yeah, I went through all that. I ended up being 500 pounds, lost 258 pounds on The Biggest Loser, completely changed and saved my life. I've kept that weight off now for 13 years. I put on quite a bit of muscle. That's why I'm still Bigg Vinny. I've been blessed to compete in everything from powerlifting to strongman competitions. And I was supposed to be dead before 30 years old. I'm 41 now. I got 2 kids and an amazing wife and own a couple different businesses. And it's just been a blessing, And when the devil said, hey, you can't do it, Jesus comes in and says, yeah, you can. So
I love that. I love that, brother. Thank you so much for sharing that powerful testament, powerful story with so many other people. And I think that's maybe where we'll start with the questions is like, what I've found is, most people that are successful in life, like yourself, there's that tipping point, right? There's that point of transformation, that tipping point. Some people like to call it defining moment. And I'd be curious at that point when you went from that victim mentality to the victor mentality, what that tipping point was for you and that defining moment was for you in life that allowed you to transform your life, that's now allowing you to transform so many other people's lives.
Yeah, there was a couple of different moments. One of them was one of my really good friends who loves me dearly and somebody I look up to. He's a very smart man. He's an engineer. And he comes to me one day and he just said, "Hey, Vinny, I love you. And I just want you to know that you're going to need to lose some weight." And I got so mad at him. I got so upset. I'm like, "How dare you? I'm on tour with Toby Keith. I got this and I got that. I got beautiful women surrounding me. I'm making great money and all these other things." He goes, "Yeah, that's great." He said, "But I'd like for you to continue those things. And if you don't lose some weight, you're not going to be able to." And I got mad at him and I sent him out of my house. And about 4 hours later, as I sit there with my conscience talking to me, saying, "Hey, that's a guy that truly loves you. Somebody will be that honest with you that'll tell you, look, I love you so much. I'm willing to take the risk on our friendship that if I don't tell you, what's going on, that you're going to die." And so I took that, in stride. It took me about 4 hours to realize I was wrong and he was right. And I called him back and apologized and started working out then. And I actually lost about 74 of the pounds before I ever went on Biggest Loser. One of my aha moments that really changed my life, I went out with my buddy. We went out catting, looking for women, clubbing, in Nashville. I was 26 years old. And we went out partying all night. We get back and we had parked on the 6th floor of this parking garage. Well, when we got back, the elevator was not working. And I was mad. I was hot. I was like, what's wrong with these people? How can you not have a simple elevator fixed? And I was complaining about having to walk up and down those stairs, and I couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden my buddy looks at me and goes, "That's the thing." He was drunk as he could be too. He goes, "That's the thing about a guy with no legs." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "They'd give anything to walk up that set of stairs." And that moment for me, he started saying, he said, "Look, man," he's like, "there's guys that go off to war that come back that are never going to be able to walk again because they were fighting for you to have the right to sit around and eat and do all the things that you do that doesn't help you get somewhere in life." And so I was just like, it was a big aha moment for me. Like, dang, dude, how ungrateful was I for having a working body that didn't have these ailments and that now I was sitting here. And then, really one of the biggest moments for me is not even about the weight loss. It was about getting my mind right and then changing my mentality from the victim. The doctor on Biggest Loser kept asking me about my mom, and I kept saying, "No, I love my mom. My mom's great. There's nothing wrong with my mom," And he said, "Well, we can tell by the test that you took before you come on the show that you love women, you respect women, but you don't trust women." And I was like, "How can you tell that?" He goes, "Well, we ask you the same questions like 5 different ways, and the way you answer them gives us a cumulative answer of what's going on in your life. So we see that you have basically either some trauma with a mom or a grandma or something like that." And I was like, "No, my mom's fine." Well, about week 3, we got to work out with Tim Tebow, and one of the most inspirational people you ever meet. But we got to work out with Tim Tebow, and after that workout, we boxed him, and he is a strong dude. And after getting hit by Tim Tebow about 15,000 times that day, I was on the treadmill walking, and they started talking to me, and all my physical walls were broken down. So when all those physical walls were broken down, the rest of it came crumbling, and I broke down, and I told them about all the beatings that I went through. I told them about the things that happened with my mom and the gun to her head and all those things that were really on me, that my whole life they were really affecting me. And I didn't even realize it because I kept just accomplishing things. I'm like, well, if I get the record deal, then people will love me. If I'm great at football and I'm all state, then people will love me. If I can lift the most weight, people will love me. And I thought as long as I kept accomplishing stuff, I was running away from all those things that was truly hurting me. And I was sitting there, and finally he said, "You want to tell us about your mom?" And I broke down. I told him everything. He goes, "Well, you know what you're going to have to do?" And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You're going to have to forgive your mom." And I said, "Why should I forgive my mom for letting me go through all that stuff?" And he looked at me and goes, "You're a Christian, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Why should God forgive you for putting his son on the cross?" I'm like, "I didn't put his son on the cross." He goes, "What did Jesus die for?" I said, "Well, he died for our sins." He goes, "You ever committed a sin?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, then you might as well put those nails in his hands yourself. You might as well been bearing the cat of 9 tails yourself because he did that for you." He goes, "And you've committed those sins, so you're part of it." And I was like, he goes, "Not only that, you were born into sin." He goes, "That God gives us a way to get out of the sin that we were born into. That's what Jesus was there for." And it came flooding in, emotions came flooding in. He goes, "Here's the exercise I want you to do. I want you to take all the things that you went through in your life, and I want you to think about those over here, and I want you to just set them aside for a second." I said, "Okay." He goes, "Now I want you to tell me your mom's story." And I was like, okay, well, I said my mom lost her mom when she was 3 years old, giving birth to my aunt. Her dad left them there with my grandma. They lived in an 800 square foot cinder block house that literally had dirt floors in one of the rooms. Like one room had no floor. It was just dirt. So they were super poor. Didn't have anything. My grandma worked at Mary's Bridal trying to pay for all three of these girls that were living there now, with no mom and no dad. By the time she was 15, she was pregnant. 18, she had me. 19, she had my sister. So by 20, she's raising three kids on her own. And she met my stepdad, Randy, who was a former Navy SEAL in Vietnam. Obviously has his own story and things he went through. I'm sure what he was putting us through didn't seem like nothing compared to what he went through. So because of that, he goes, plus she went through all that, plus she was getting beat every day. Plus she was being held basically hostage by the drugs that she was on and all these other things. He's like, so maybe you can give her a little grace and forgiveness and realize that all the things you were going through, she had already been through and had already been through worse things and was still going through the same thing you were. He's like, it's so hard for us to put ourselves in other people's shoes, but that's what we have to do in order to forgive people. We have to not look at it just from our angle. We have to look at it from both perspectives. And that right there changed my life. It took me from being this victim of like, oh, poor me, look at everything I've been through. And I didn't do it with, a lot of people will do it, poor me, and then never accomplish anything. I use it as fuel to go accomplish 1,000 different things. The problem is however you're using that trauma for fuel, it's still going to affect you eventually if you don't face the certain thing that you went through. So once I faced it and I forgave her, it took me a while. It wasn't like it happened overnight, but I finally forgave her, and the weight of the world came off my shoulders. I lost 258 pounds, but the weight of the world came off my shoulders when I was able to forgive her. And the biggest thing that I wish I could do for her is I wish I could get her to forgive herself. Now that's not on us. We can't, teach somebody self-forgiveness. We have to learn it ourselves. But I wish that I could teach her to say, hey, Mom, I forgive you, and you need to forgive yourself so that you can move on and have a great life as well. And she's getting better. She's done better the last few years. It's been 3 years since she tried to, unalive herself, as they would say nowadays, instead of suicide. But it's been 3 years since then, and she's getting stronger every day. So God's working, and I told her one time, I said, either the devil don't want you or God ain't through with you yet, because you keep trying and he keeps saying no. So, but that moment for me, having them explain to me what forgiveness is and the way I should forgive. And, there's very few things in this life that I think we shouldn't be, forgive people for. People make mistakes. People are human. People, get selfish at times. People do things the wrong way. And we've all been those same people. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things, and we want people to forgive us. So that forgiving moment really was something that changed my victim mentality to being like, just for example, whenever I used to accomplish things, I did it so I could say, look at me. I told you I could do it. I told you so. I told you so. Even though I'm 500 pounds, I got this girl. Even though I'm 500 pounds, I got the record deal. I told you so. And what it really helped me do is take my mentality from being I told you so to being see you can too. And once I started doing that with a positive, loving heart, as opposed to a spiteful look at me heart, and I started just being the example for people, it really changed everything for me.
No, I love that. I love that. And I think there's one thing to really note out of that story too, because I talk about this all the time, that there's a couple different types of people in life. And I think you really embody the latter, and so does your story, because it's, you look at two different types of people in life. You got the person that you meet, the victim, that they always got things going wrong. You wouldn't believe what happened to me next. And then you'd see them maybe not for a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and you talk to them again, and if the perspective didn't shift, the mindset didn't shift, and the attitude to what's going on around them didn't shift, they're that same person. Oh, man, you wouldn't believe I had the worst 3 years of my life. And they're just constantly in this perpetual state of having the worst year of their life, because
always.
I'm a firm believer that that's, the inner language that you speak, what you speak to yourself, what you put out in the world, your self-beliefs, that's really, the power we have as human beings is what we become, right? But then you look at, hey, what's the difference in that other person? It's almost like the person that's got the Midas touch. And I look at you as one of those people, right? It's like no matter what you put your mind to, you accomplish. No matter what you are, like a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you're just winning in every regard of life. Yeah. And it sounds like that didn't always happen, right? It was like when you had that perspective shift, went from the victim mentality to the victor mentality, not only did it shift your perspective, but it shifted to what you attract in your life. It shifted the results you get in your life. It's shifted the language and what you put out into the world. So I think, the lesson there for everybody is no matter what's going on in your life, if you let it define you, it will. But if you let it fuel you, it also will. Right. And I think you have a choice one way or the other. Either way is going to be hard, but I'll choose the latter all day, every day.
Well, one of the things you've probably heard it said a million times, people say, oh, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's just not true. I know a lot of guys that are phenomenally rich in money and they're terrible dads or terrible husbands. I know a lot of people that are great dads and great husbands, but they're not great providers. I know a lot of people that are great in the gym and they work out every single day and they bust their butt in there, but then they go and they eat the wrong foods. So it's like, it's not how you do anything, it's how you do everything. How you do something is how you do that. Me, even when I first come off Biggest Loser, my mentality was I still had to work out 5 or 6 hours a day. I still had to lift weights twice a day and run 3 miles every morning and do all these things. And I did that for 5 years. And I started losing relationships because I prioritized that over every single thing in such a way that it became my religion. I would never miss a day of going to the gym. I would never miss a day of putting in that work, but I would miss a day going to church. I would compromise my church and be like, well, I can just listen to it online or I can just do this or do that. So, but like I said, I've always wanted, I always used to say that too, because I used to do a lot of network marketing and things like that back in the day. And it was one of those deals where I was like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I'm like, no, I'm in here crushing it at all these things, but I weigh 500 pounds and I'm eating, cheeseburgers and pizzas every night laying in bed watching TV. Yeah. That's not a great thing to do. So, but I agree with you. It's the mentality of how you do stuff and the reason you do things a lot of times can determine the outcome as well. You might have a great outcome, but that don't mean you didn't hurt 20 people on the way to your great outcome. If I can get to this great outcome and I've helped people along the way and I've done the right thing and I haven't stepped on somebody else's neck or broke somebody else's back to get that, then that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Now, if I got there and it's like, oh man, I'm a millionaire. Look at all these great things I have, but I'm standing up at the top of this mountain alone, and people hate me for it, for the things I did to them. That's not any good. And I think we've all seen it from both sides. We've all been those people. We've all made mistakes along the way and said, I'm going to do this for me because it's better for me. And I'm not saying that you can't have that mentality. Obviously, God needs to come first, but then you got to make sure you're taking care of your family, make sure you're taking care of your household. But hopefully, when you're doing that, you're not hurting anybody else.
Absolutely, no, I couldn't agree more.
Also, my wife has joined us. Say, hey, wife.
Nice. Hi, nice to meet you finally. Good to see you. Yeah. You got a great guy there. So he's real good man, and we're grateful to have him on the show today. Grateful for him, his friendship. So.
I love y'all too.
Bigg Vinny, I got a question for you that I'm real curious about. And when I look at business today, and Dave and I talk about this all the time on this show, attention is the currency, getting people's attention. And you have not only been in business, but even on the other side of like the top of entertainment. And I just look at the value of being able to entertain people and capture their attention as something that a lot of business owners want to get better at, but they might not know the formula for how to grab people's attention, how to keep them entertained while staying authentic to themselves. So I'm curious, because you live in both worlds, how the entertainment piece maybe has helped educate you on the business piece. And for like agency owners, producers, anybody on here who owns a business or is trying to go out there and entertain rather than just pitch, what kind of advice would you have for them to start to learn the game of entertainment within business?
Yeah, so a lot of entertainers are mad because they look at the social media and what's going on, and you got people that have way lesser talent in music, or they're not as good a singer, or they're not as good a songwriter, but something blows up for them on the internet. The next thing you know, they're making $25, $35, $40, $100, $200,000 a night playing music, and people get mad about it. I'd rather look at those successes and say, hey man, if you have all this great talent and you believe that you're so much better than them, what are they doing better than you? And when you go look at their social media, they're consistent. They're on it. They're posting every single day. And it took me a while to learn this, because I'm like, I've always been this, I'm a very big personality in person. I'm not very good at, editing videos and making my social media look so slick, which now it's kind of come to pass that they're like, hey, the slicker doesn't always matter. It's really the content you're putting out there. So what I try to explain to people is, what you're putting out there, your content is like you have your own television channel that you're programming. just like Netflix or Hulu or any of these other, big places had to start off with something. Well, they started using other people's programming first, right? They're like, okay, well, let's go license all these movies we can show on our channel, and they can get all these great movies in one place. Well, then they started saying, well, look, if we're going to stand the test of time, all these, Disney's going to start putting its own channel out, and Peacock and all these other ones are going to start putting their own channel out. We got to create original material that's going to make people want to watch. So if you're trying to garner attention, you're trying to get people to watch you, would you watch your channel? And if your channel is just a constant sales pitch of, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, that might work for the people that are looking for that. But how are you going to stumble upon new people that might find your product and love you? Now, I think it comes different with different industries, but at the end of the day, is your content something that's going to make people want to watch? And I look at it. David met my good buddy Richard Coletti here about, 2 weeks ago at the Elevation event that David put on. That was awesome. And if you didn't come to it, you missed out. But anyways, he put on this awesome event, and my buddy Richard Coletti come, and he's been talking to me ever since last year. He's like, Vinny, you need to start a roofing company. I'm like, why would I start a roofing company? I know zero about roofing. He's like, I don't need you to be a roofer. I was like, yeah, good, because I ain't climbing up on a ladder on a roof anyway. He goes, I just need you to be the personality of the company. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, people love you. He goes, so get out there and be Bigg Vinny, wear the overalls, do your thing, but talk about your roofing company. He goes, make great content that's going to make people watch so that they say, hey, when I start thinking about I need my roof done, or man, I had a hurricane come through, or a tornado or whatever, they're going to call you because they're going to trust you because you're Bigg Vinny and they enjoy your personality. He's like, so much of what we do now is contingent on, did the people remember you? Did the people want to come to you? Did they feel safe with you? Did they feel like you were going to actually take care of them? And I think that comes with just being a genuine person. And so when you're putting out content, I don't always think you should mimic what everybody else does. I think there are certain things that are hitting the algorithms right now, obviously trending songs, things like that. But I think you got to go out there and be a genuine person, and you'll attract the type of people that are looking for what you have. And so I don't would ever tell anybody to go out there and be fake, but what I would tell you to do is put yourself out there. Be out there every single day. Don't miss a day. Post something. I don't care if it's a story, if it's a reel, if it's a TikTok or whatever. You need to be out there posting every single day about what you do, who you are, and why they should choose you. And then on top of that, you need to let them know a little bit more about you. Don't just be like, my business, my business, my business. Be like, hey, here's my business, and this is what I do I like to go fly fishing. And then people that are like, fly fish, oh man, I identify with that guy. He likes to fly fish. I like to fly fish. I'm going to get him to do my insurance, or I'm going to get him to do my, I think we got a lot of real estate agents on here. Why am I going to hire that real estate agent over the 45 other billboards that I saw driving down, Florida Boulevard, whatever, this past month? Well, I'm going to pick them. Well, that guy likes to fish like I do. Man, I got a lot in common with that dude. He's got 2 kids and he struggled with this, or his son had autism or whatever. You just have to be genuine and be real. Let people know your story. And if you do that, I believe that you're going to meet the right people that are going to buy into your business. There's 8 billion people in this world. You know what I mean? There's almost, 360 or almost million people in America. You don't need to get every single person, but you just need to get the people that would choose you, and that you would choose them.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said there too. When you go out there, the one thing that I see about with you is just going out there being your true authentic self. And I think more times than not, like, people are so concerned with being liked and loved by everybody that they don't go out there and put their true authentic self out into the world. So they never end up really, really at the end of the day at a deeper level resonating with anybody. And I think, one of the things that I even found personally myself, one of the things that'll do that really quick is start posting about religion and politics, and you'll find out, really, really quickly who you are, and you'll get over that fear. But, I found that you're not going to be liked by everybody, right? If you look at that, like, hey, Jesus, when he walked the earth, guess what? Not everybody liked Jesus.
Yeah.
The ice cream man, you'd think the ice cream man, everybody would love the ice cream man, but there's a whole heck of a lot of lactose intolerant people out there in the world. So not everybody even likes the ice cream man. And when you start to realize that, hey, you know what? Not everybody's going to like me. Not everybody's going to resonate with my message. But if I do go out there and be my true authentic self and just leave it all on the table, that I'm going to attract the like community, the like similar frequency, both on a collaboration perspective, a mentorship perspective, a potential partnership perspective, and, a friendship perspective and a client perspective. And now, yes, it might be true that you're not liked and loved by everybody, but who is? But you're now liked and loved by the people that matter the most to you, that are on that same frequency to you. And, I think that really at the end of the day, what life is all about. And I think, that you're a proven testament to that.
Yeah, no, I believe 100% in that. And the thing is, this is an example I always use. There's people out there that think LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan, and those people are wrong, but I still love them, even though they have their different opinions than me.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's what I always look at is like, listen, just because.
And I always say to that one, Jordan's never been to a Diddy party.
That's right. In a maid's outfit. No, but that's just the way that I look at it. I look at it and say, look, we're not always going to agree on everything. We don't even have to be friends. I got so many friends in my life, that I do care about and I do love, and I don't even have time for some of them, And so when I look at it, the people that are going to get my time first is going to be my family. And, you have to look at those things. And, like, if somebody doesn't like you, the worst thing you can do is sit there and pawn over. And I used to be that way. I've always been one of these people. I want everybody to like me. I want everybody to love Bigg Vinny, and I think they should, because I'm a pretty good dude. But the truth of the matter is, one of my best friends in the entire world, Jared Blake, for the first 2 or 3 years that he knew me, he didn't like me because he thought there was no way there was anybody that was as nice as me. He thought there was no way there was anybody that was as jovial as me. He thought I was a big old fake, until we finally went on a tour together after he was on The Voice and I was on Biggest Loser. We did a tour together for Toys for Tots and Christmas for Kids, and we raised a ton of money. He's like, man, we walked into some terrible venues with nobody in there. And then we walked into some that were packed and sold out. He said, no matter what, if there was one person in there and it was a smoky bar in the middle of, what was it called? The Rattlesnake or whatever it was down somewhere close to Fort Myers, Florida that we played at, or if it was a packed full, casino or whatever, he said, you still loved everybody and still got up there with the same jovial attitude on stage. He's like, and that's when I realized that, no, he really is that person, and I just feel blessed every day that I get to wake up and do what I love and make a living at it. I've had to learn, I had to learn during COVID that it's okay to diversify. For me, it's like, no, I'm just a musician. And I identified my entire life as just that musician, and I thought I have to make everybody have to get a number one. I got to go to the Grammys one day. I got to do all these things because that's the checklist you're given. Well, little did I know that eventually I'd be motivational speaking at schools. Eventually I would be out there sharing my story that would save somebody's life. All these things that I thought was my identity was just one of the talents that I had, and so many times we identify as, that one thing, like if you own a roofing company, I'm a roofing, I own a roofing company. That's all I do. But you're so much more than that. You're probably a dad. You're probably a brother, a friend. You're a Christian. You're all these different things. And at the end of the day, the one thing I want to make sure I always identify is as a child of God. And I want to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And not everybody has to be that. I realize a lot of people were born and raised and taught something completely different from birth than I was. I don't have to, I don't have to look at those people and think bad of them. I love them as long as they respect me and I respect them. We're good to go. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those deals where at some point, I promise you, as lovable as Bigg Vinny is talking about myself in the third person, people have not liked me along the way. And it blew my mind, and I let it affect me so bad for a long time. And now I just realize, like, oh, if they don't like me, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go spend time with the people that do, and eventually, hopefully I say something or do something that inspires you to either like me or at least learn from me,
No, absolutely. And I love that. And I've seen people that crossed over, right, with that once they've gotten to the place just like you did, it's almost like the same exact effect, right? There's so many people out there that I don't think they realize the new world that we live in, where business has changed, business has evolved, and literally the biggest form of currency out there when it comes to entrepreneurship is attention, right? And it's attention. And I think getting attention in the right way, being your true authentic self, attracting your tribe, that's what really resonates. And I've seen everybody that's crossed that border, everybody that's crossed that threshold. It's like you realize you don't need everybody, right? You could blow up a massive company and have a very small segment, and then just through being your true authentic self and putting yourself out there on social media, wherever you might go, you're going to attract your tribe. And when people want to do business, they don't buy a product or service. They buy people, they buy relationships, they buy from those that they know, like, and trust, and they resonate with the most. But if you go out there just trying to please everybody and like you're not resonating with anybody, nobody's going to buy from you. So it's like you got to pick or choose your lane. And, I think that's the best way you could service yourself and service your company. And that leads into the next question for you. I know you've had a pretty diverse career from music to fitness and now entrepreneurship, business ownership. How did you adapt your mindset when transitioning from the stage over to the world of entrepreneurship? And what advice would you give others that are maybe looking in that same place to rebrand themselves in a similar fashion?
Yeah, I think for the longest time, I thought that I couldn't do anything else, that my music was just who I was and what I did. Like I said, I identified as that. And I looked at the way I ran my music business, the way that I handled every single relationship, the way that I could call somebody 10 years after I played their show because I made a relationship with them and they would hire me again. And I started to realize that's the same way in business. When you make these great relationships, if you're a real estate agent, and you sell a house to somebody there and they had a great experience with you, because giving a great experience is about the best thing you can do in business, because then the people that got the great experience is going to tell other people about it. And if you got people out there word of mouth talking about you, it's going to be great. Same thing with my music. If people were out there saying, man, I had the best time at Bigg Vinny's show, man, I love that guy. His stories were awesome. He was funny, but he also, got to my heart. If they have that great experience, and they're going to tell other people about it. The next thing you know, I'm getting hired to do more stuff. Even the event that you brought me to, I was like, I don't know what these people are going to think about me walking into my overalls. It was in a suit and tie kind of environment there, and everybody was dressed to the nines. Well, it was a conversation piece, and they loved me just the way that I was. And I could have almost, I told you, just like, dude, are they going to be okay? And he's like, yeah, man, you're going to be fine, And I came in, they accepted me, loved me for who I was. And because, I've 2 or 3 of these people have already been talking about, like, hey, I'd love to have you come back down for this, or I'd love to have you come back down for that, and all that kind of stuff. So it all really is the same. It's really about the relationships and how you treat people. I can't remember the exact person that said it. Y'all probably know, but people will never remember what you did for them, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
100%. Absolutely, man.
And I think that's such a real thing. I think that because of the way I've handled business, when we were out there playing shows, one of the reasons that we still get hired to this day, we only had one song that was considered a hit, which was called "Rockin' the Beer Gut" back in the day. It's about girls with beer guts. Anyway, we had one song that was considered a hit, but we still get hired and make really good money, to go play some of these shows, because we made these people feel good about themselves. And one of the ways we did it, we never complained. We got in there, and if they said, hey, we need to move your time slot, or we need to cut you back by 10 minutes because we're running behind, or hey, we can't let y'all use in-ears today because we don't have the proper system for it. We just went with the flow, and we said, hey, man, no problem. We're going to adapt, and we're going to put on the best show we can with the abilities that we've been given. And because we did that is the reason that people hire us to this day, is because we didn't give them a hard time. We didn't make it harder for them to do their jobs. They're out there spending 30, 40, 50, 200, 500, $500,000.
And we froze up a little bit there because I know he's mobile. There we go. I think we got him coming back.
The last thing they want is for Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, I can hear you now. We're good. We're good.
We pulled up to my house. I'm sure it switched over to the internet.
No worries, brother.
Anyway, as you can see, be there for my sons. So I was going to make sure that I was both places. And anyways, I don't know which part y'all heard and didn't hear. Because I was just
it did chop up a bit that was in there, but actually it transitions perfectly into that next place, like what you just said, right? So it's I think a lot of people in business think that it's like, man, there's not enough time in the day. Like, I'm all in on my business, putting in those 14-hour, 16-hour days. And I think there's seasons that you have to do that in business. But where I see people struggle in life is they never seem to figure out how to have their cake and eat it too. And what do I mean by that? It's like, I think when you go all business in life and all the other important area of life suffer, your relationships, your health, your faith, whatever it might be. But when I look at you, it seems like you got a really good balance when it comes to that. Like, even this show, hey, not only did you show up to the show, but you're at your kid's event, and you're having your cake and eating it too. And you're there for your family, prioritizing that, even with the high demand, busy schedule and all the things that you have going on. So maybe you could tell everybody what that secret is, what you do when it comes to your routine to be incredibly intentional, to find balance when it comes to entertainment, entrepreneurship, the family life, being there for the family, prioritizing your health. What does that look like in Bigg Vinny's world to basically be able to give attention to all those important areas so not one of them is, slipping at any given point in time too far?
Yeah. Well, I'd be lying if I said that none of them ever slip. It definitely is going to happen. I got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. I didn't get to go to my son's kindergarten graduation, but I was out paying our rent for the next 3 months, that week. So there's definitely times when I have to look at it and I have to prioritize. It's like, okay, I'm going to miss this very important thing, but I'm going to make sure that we're taken care of, that we got food on the table, that we got everything we need for the next 3 or 4 months because I'm gone for this. If it would have been a situation where it's like, hey, if I miss this, I'm not going to come back with enough to pay the next 2 or 3 weeks. I wouldn't do it, So I have to look at those things. I have to prioritize, like, what is going to make the best situation for my family. And unfortunately, sometimes that is saying, hey, I got to go be here in a time when I don't want to be. And, so it's looking at those situations the right way, weighing out the good and the bad with every single thing that happens. This morning, my wife told me, it's like, you don't need to come. You just be on the call. It's going to be a great call for you. You need to go be on the call. And I was like, no, Jagger was so excited and saying, I can't believe Dad's actually going to be here because I missed this Otter Splash Dash last year. I said, there ain't no way that I'm not going to be there. I said, I know it's not going to look, the social media clips or whatever ain't going to look as good with me being in the car or me being in front of this door instead of having my setup behind me and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, but it's going to be better for my family. It's going to be better for us. And I actually think it ties into what we're doing here because now we're talking about it. But as far as that goes, I just try to look at each individual situation, prioritize those things, weigh out the good and the bad, and take those as they come. Tonight, I have a show in downtown Nashville, so I won't be putting my kids to bed tonight. That it's going to be my wife's responsibility. So having her as my teammate, nothing that I do in this world could I do and at the level that I do it out without having her right there with me. There's been times I've done, lots of great things in my life, but not when I had kids, not whenever I had all these other things and obligations in my life. Whenever I was a single 22, 23, 27, all the way up to 27-year-old man, it was easy for me to make decisions. I didn't have to consider anybody else. I just considered, okay, does it put money in my pocket? Great, I'm going to do it. But now that I'm a dad, that I'm trying to be a representative at my church, that I'm trying to, keep my music going, I have the resort going, I have all these different things. But more than anything, before I do those, I have to consider, okay, how does this affect my family? How does this affect my wife? How does this affect my kids? All that kind of stuff. And there's times whenever I get it wrong, but never intentionally do I go out there and say, hey, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I want something. My wife is very adamant about, whenever I came down to Miami, I was like, man, I'm just getting back from, I was going to Vegas for an entire week. I missed an entire week with my family to go make great money for my family. I came back. I was home for one day, and I couldn't have came if it wasn't on that day. The day that I was home was my son's birthday. And then I flew out late that night to come down and be in Miami. But, I had a guilt about it. I felt like, man, am I doing the wrong thing? And my wife was there to assure me, like, no, this is a great opportunity for you. You need to go down there and hang out with David because we've become pretty good friends since the Grant Cardone speak-off deal. And she's like, you need to go spend that time. And it's going to eventually help our family way more than it's going to hurt you being gone the night of his birthday when he's in bed anyways. So all those situations, I think I've just taken that approach with, hey, let's weigh it out. Let's look at it, together with my wife, make that decision. And there's times it's hard for us to agree, like, hey, is this really worth it? Is it not worth it? I had to go ahead and recognize my worth. That was one of the things that I really worked on this past year, was recognizing my worth and knowing what am I truly worth. So if I'm going to go and play a show, if I'm going to go be the host or an auctioneer, I started auctioneering 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm pretty good at it. And I mostly do charity auctions. Well, the thing I realized is after I did about my 30th free charity auction, like, hey, wait a second. Everybody else there is getting paid and I'm doing everything for free, Yeah. And I started to realize, like, hey, what we make for the charity versus what we had to spend to make that is the difference, as opposed to me saying, I'm just going to do it for free all the time. What if I did make something, but the charity still made money too? So I had to learn those things and realize, like, hey, because you're there, they're going to make $50,000 more tonight than they would have made without you being there. So you're worth.
And it's tough for you to keep filling up other people's cups if yours is empty. So I think it's a lesson for everybody too, because I've been in that same place, right? You give, and I'm a firm believer, the more that you give in this world, the more you help other people get to where they want to go. You really don't have to worry about your own needs, your own destination. But there is something to be said about, hey, while you're a giver, keeping your cup full, because you don't want to run out and have an empty cup where you got nothing else left to give. So you might have to take something back at some point, let it build, let it grow, so then you can amplify that effort of giving that is such a rare commodity into this world. So I absolutely love that. And then one of the things I loved about what you're saying there too was really, to me, I think some of the important things in our lives is the ships that we allow have in our lives. And you're like, again, another great example of having the right ships in your life, the right relationships, right? Because as you said, you couldn't do it without your spouse and your partner. And I think that's the same with me. And I think, sometimes people will get in the relationships for the wrong reason, and there's misalignment there. And if you don't have that right partner, that right relationship, that right spouse that's backing everything that you do, and you can work together as a team, you're never going to achieve the dream, right? So you got to have that right spouse, that right relationship. I think it's the same thing with partnerships. If you pick the wrong partnership, it could end you. If you have the right partnership, it can propel you. If you get the right mentorship with the right data that can help you get to where you want to go at an accelerated rate. But if you choose the wrong mentorship just because you like the person, but they might not know the thing or two about the thing or two that you need to know, and you get the wrong advice, that could be detrimental. Relationships with your customers, having the right customers with the right relationships. And really what life is all about to me, like, I really just believe that you can't do big things, you can't do great things alone, and you got to align yourself. Why do you think, like, in this maybe administration would be a bad example, but when you look at typical presidential administrations, they build a great cabinet around them. And I think what we're seeing firsthand now is like what it looks like when you build a bad cabinet around you. But when you build a good cabinet around you and you got those right advisors, like, you're unstoppable. And I think that's the same thing in life. If you bring those right advisors around you in each core area of life, you truly need that right team to do really big things in this world. And you can't do everything yourself. And I know I was at one point in time in my career, I just, oh man, if you can't, you got that old saying, right? That old mantra, well, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And then you find yourself doing everything yourself, and then you can only carry so much on your shoulders, and then everything starts to break, and you learn that you got to have trust in the right people, the right relationships, the right partnerships, the right mentorships, and then choosing maybe even in your company as you start to go, the right people that can really embrace leadership from a core value cultural perspective that can help lead your organization.
No, I can tell you with that firsthand. So I leave this out of my story a lot, but at 20 years old, I was a general manager of one of the top 4 Sonics in the nation, Sonic drive-in, like fast food, which is another reason I got to be 500 pounds, because chili cheese fries and bacon cheeseburgers are great. But I was this general manager at 20 years old. And I was really good at running a Sonic. I could literally make the burgers, the fries. I could create the entire meal in no time, and I could make it hot and fresh, and give it in a great, prepare it the right way, make it look great, all that kind of stuff. And what happened was I got to become a general manager because I won 3rd place in the entire nation. I got a big old bronze medal from the Dr. Pepper Games, which is like the Olympics for Sonic. There was 3,500 Sonics in it that year, and I placed number 3 over all the employees and all 3,500 Sonics. And would have placed number 1, but they were wrong. So no, I'm just kidding. But I placed number 3 overall. And I went into this store when I came back, kind of my bonus for being that, because I was an assistant, I was the first assistant manager. They said, "Hey, guess what? We love how great you are. We're going to honor you by giving you your own store." And I say, giving me, I earned it. But I'd earned the fact to have my own store. So now I was going to be making $2,500 a month, which was my salary, and then 20% of the store's profit. So I went from being, I don't remember what I was making, $10 an hour at the time. Of course, this is, 18 years ago. I went from making $10 an hour to making like $70,000 a year. And for me, I was like, especially back then, that was a whole lot of money. I couldn't believe it. I'd never in my life thought I would make that kind of money. And so I went to making this really good money and doing these great things. And then I realized one day, it was 4th of July weekend, whenever I was 20 years old, every one of my friends were out having a party and having a blast and all this. And I was priding myself on the fact that I'd worked almost 100 hours that week. And I was like, I worked 100 hours. I called my buddy Wesley Hedgepath, who was my best friend in high school, still one of my best friends to this day, probably still my best friend to this day. I called him up. I was like, dude, he ran the Sonic one town over from me because we both went to, did the whole Sonic thing together. And I said, hey, man, I was like, what are you doing? How many hours you work? He was like, 42. I was like, 42? I was like, how'd you get away with only working 42 hours? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I got great assistant managers. And I was like, he goes, how many assistant managers do you got? I said, I got one, my first assistant. That's it. And he goes, okay. He's like, well, why don't you have more assistant managers? I'm like, well, I mean, nobody can do it like I can do it. I just do this myself and that myself. He's like, listen, he goes, I got a manager that does the food order. I got a manager that handles the car hops. I got a manager that handles the cleanliness of the outside of the place. I got a manager that handles the landscape, and I got a manager that handles this and that. He goes, I went and hired people that were good at those things because I didn't want to have to do them myself all the time. He goes, you know what I get to do? I get to be the general manager, and I get to make sure that every one of those positions are operating at their top level. He goes, and that's why my store runs so great without me having to be there 100 hours. He goes, I run my food costs. I run my labor costs. I run all these great things because I hired the right people, which is what you were saying a while ago. And so for me, I was like, holy crap. I was like, I got to figure this thing out. So he had like 7 or 8 assistant managers. I had one. I was working all these hours. I was beating him. So I was doing great as far as the store goes. I was leading the charge that year. And but I was miserable, and I started having sleep paralysis, where my mind would wake up, my body would stay asleep. Yep. And I was like so high stressed and all that other stuff, and it caused me so many issues. And I realized I'm like, the trade-off wasn't worth it. Why would I not want to run all my numbers and do all these great things, provide other people? And he taught me about delegation. The way he did it was he sent me a book called The 1 Minute Manager. And I read this book, and it completely changed the way I handle people. It's like, it taught me how to catch people doing something right instead of catching them doing something wrong. It taught me how to give them praise. And that way, whenever it was time to get on to them, I could say, hey, remember how good you did this? I really loved how you did this. I need you to do this more like that. And then people were like, oh, well, he praised me, so he's not even getting on to me. He's just saying that he knows I have the ability to be better in this field. And so doing all that, and it taught me how to delegate with authority. And that was one of the biggest things that I never did. I would, even when I started hiring general managers, at first I would hire them, or assistant managers, I would hire them and I would give them something, but then I would micromanage everything they were doing. So I was doing the same amount of work, even though I was giving somebody else the opportunity to do the work. So I had to learn how to delegate with actual power so that they could actually have the authority to do what they needed to do. And once I learned that, I was able to go and hire the right people for the right jobs at the right times. And I didn't have to go back and micromanage them. I knew it was going to be taken care of the right way. And I think it's the same way with your relationship in life. Me and my wife, we did the Enneagram personality tests and all that kind of stuff. And what it led me to realize is I'm a 7? Am I a 7 or a 6, babe? I'm a 7. I'm a free spirit. I can go with the flow. If something changes, I'm like, cool, no big deal. I'll just go with it. But I'm not very planned out because of that, because nothing ever seems like a big deal to me. It's like, hey, you know what? They're not going to be able to have this microphone, or hey, they're not going to be able to get you on stage right at this time. I'm like, no big deal. I'll go on whenever. Not a big thing. It doesn't bother me. Some people, my wife is a 3. She's very competitive. She wants everything to be planned out and scheduled, and she wants to know exactly what we're doing, all that kind of stuff. So once I learned how to handle people based on their personality, based on the way that they handle problems, it really helped me a lot. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it by any means, but just understanding why something bothers my wife. Like if she don't like to leave stuff out on the counter, like the blender or the toaster or any of that stuff. She doesn't like it out on the counter. To me, I'm like, why would we not leave it out there? We're going to use it every single day. So why don't we leave it out there so it's just already there? But in her mind, she's like, no, we need to put it away so it looks very clean and clear in here. And so
that's my
instead
wife.
of arguing with her about it, you're the same way. Instead of arguing with her about it, I was like, it doesn't affect me or bother me that bad, so I let it go. So I think you have to look at those situations that you deal with in life and the personalities that you have around you, the team you have around you, and you have to say, okay, is it really that important to me? On a scale of 1 to 10, this doesn't affect my life in this way, but it might be a 5 to them and a 1 to me. So why would I want to argue with them about it? Now, I still put my keys in my wallet and everything inside my hat and set it upside down on top of the counter, and she still puts it in the drawer whenever I come back in there. But that's just the way it is. So we've learned. You learn those personalities. You learn those traits. You learn how to handle certain people. People that are a type 1 or whatever they are, they're very analytical. They need everything structured. They need to know exactly what time everything's starting, and it needs to go by that. And if it don't go by that, they get off kilter and they can't hardly handle themselves. Those people are a lot harder for me to work with because I'm so free spirited that they're over planning affects my free spirit, So I had to learn, like, hey, how do I work with those people? How do I accomplish this? How do we both have exactly what we want and feel good about it? And the only way to do that is to learn each other and know, who you're getting into business with, who you're getting into stuff with. I need those people that are level ones because they're going to keep me from, overspending. They're going to keep me from overexerting myself. They're going to keep me from thinking I can fit more things into a 4-hour show or, a day than I think I can. So the good thing is my wife's a hybrid. She's probably a 3 and a 1. She's super organized and always good to go. So
love it. Now, I wanted to ask you next too. I think, a lot of times in life, people define success many different ways. And I'd be curious how you define success and maybe what your proudest moment is in life that embodies your true, authentic definition of success in your world.
Yeah. So, obviously there are so many ways to define success. Some people define it by money. Obviously in my industry it can be defined by how famous you've gotten, which the more famous you get, the more money you're going to have, obviously, unless you don't know how to invest and spend it. We've seen a lot of guys have a lot of hits and things in the country music world and then be bankrupt 2 years after they don't have a hit. Same thing in the NFL. You see some of these players, or NBA, these players make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, and 2 years after they're out of the league, they're completely broke. So success for me is really always based in Jesus Christ. Was I a good steward of what he gave me? Was I a good steward of not just my money and my time, but whenever I had the chance to talk about Jesus, did I make sure that I did that? It says in the Bible, if you deny him here, that he'll deny you at the gates of heaven. So I don't ever want to be standing at the gates of heaven and be like, hey, remember that time that you were asked if you believe in me and you didn't stand up? So, I think that's part of it. But as far as the business success goes, I think you have to look at it like this. Are you able to go out there and pay your bills and make sure you're taking care of your family? And then how many other people is your business helping as well? It doesn't mean that you have to have 5,000 employees. It doesn't make you any better. But it's like, I have this resort. I never have to go down there to really handle very much stuff. I put on the concerts and I do kind of my thing that I'm good at. But, we have a manager and she's down there working her butt off every day. I don't have to call and check on her every single day. We still call and check and make sure she's got what she needs and all that kind of stuff, which she's actually leaving me this year. So now I got to find a new one. She's 64 years old and she said she's ready to not carry canoes anymore, unfortunately. So, but whenever I look at that, the success of that individual business is that, hey, I make money off of it and I'm building equity in it and I don't have to spend time on it every single day. My music has gotten to a point to where I know that I got checks coming in every quarter from BMI because of the songs that I've written and the things that I've done. I've created another source of income there. I've done all these great things with that. But then how is it affecting the other people? How is it affecting? Is it providing jobs? Well, my music has provided jobs at BMI for people for the last 20 something years to go out and check and do their end of the job and all that kind of thing. So, the way I look at success is, on a whole, are you hurting people? Or are you helping people? And I feel like all of my businesses have never done anything but help people. My music has helped people have a good time and forget about their hard week that they had. Even though they had to spend their hard-earned, saved up money to come out and have a beer with their buddies, they came out and they forgot about their worries for, 3 hours or whatever it was that night. My business that I have with the canoeing and kayaking and camping and all that provides families with a great opportunity to come down and spend some time on the river, get away from their TV screens and their phones and all that, and then just enjoy some time with nature. The roofing company, as I get it built with Richie Coletti, hopefully I'll be able to provide people with the proper roofs over their heads so that they're not, worried about leaks and things like that. But I think, when you look at it, and just strictly on have you succeeded or not, it has to be based on the way you wake up every day and how you feel and how your family feels around you. It can't be based on the amount of money that's in your bank account, even though that's a great measure of, hey, am I doing well? It can't be based on, is the business getting more famous or is it getting bigger and all that? It has to be based on, am I actually living the kind of life that I would prefer to live versus am I waking up every day and hating life? Do I wake up every day and I dread going into work? Do I dread the people that I'm around? If I'm waking up and I'm living like that, I don't want to live like that. I think it'd be the same way. You have to look at it like a marriage. If you wake up every day and you're like, God, another day with this person.
Yep.
You might need to get out of that marriage, you know. But if you're waking up every day and like, man, thank God I got another, don't mean you're not going to argue, don't mean you're not going to have disagreements and things like that. Those things are going to happen. But if your overall feeling is always, I hate this job, even though it's paying me all this money, I hate this marriage, even though I get to have sex and every now and then, whatever. If that's your true feeling, then you probably have to change your life a little bit. And it doesn't always mean that you need to get out of that business. It might just mean you need to look at yourself sometimes too and say, hey, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I, out here following God's plan? And am I out here doing what God would have me doing on a daily basis? Am I representing myself? Whenever I'm out there doing shows and playing shows all over the country, there's women around every single night. And the way I conduct myself and the way that I handle myself in those situations is I look at it and say, would I be okay with my wife doing this? Would I be okay with my wife talking to a guy? Would I be okay with my wife, hanging out, after the show was over, this or that? And that's how I make my decision. If the answer is no, then I don't do that situation. That's just kind of the way that I've tried to handle those unique events as part of it, and I think that's just being respectful and everything. So I got on a long tangent, but there's so many.
No, you're good. You're good, man. You've been, this has been an awesome show, and you've been just adding tremendous value. So, everybody give Bigg Vinny some incredible love in the chat. What an amazing show so far. And as we're wrapping up towards the end of the show here, one of the things I really love about you is your willingness to just go out there with your faith and wear that on your sleeve, which kind of leads to this last and final question. And then we'll get into, how people can follow you, how they can work with you. Because I'd love to put that out there at the end of the show. But the question I'd like to ask you is, God comes to you in a dream one night, and he tells you, Bigg Vinny, this is going to be your last day on earth. And what I want you to do is write out a letter of your legacy, what you're going to leave people. And that might be like 2 to 3 things. And you had to sit there knowing this is your last 24 hours and this is going to define you, define the legacy that you're going to leave on this world. What does that slip of paper look like in Bigg Vinny's life?
Man, that's a big question. I think for me, the first thing I would tell people is every single issue and every problem that you have can be solved by reading your Bible, can be solved by going to God. I know that a lot of people don't think that's true, but I've never seen anybody fail with it. I've never seen it fail that when you turn to God, when you turn to the Bible, no matter what you've done wrong, there's people that have been murderers. I've spoken probably 10, 15 prisons across this country, and I've met murderers that killed other people, and they look at it and they're like, I know what I did was wrong, but I found God since then. I found Jesus, and I know the kind of person that I was is not the kind of person that I am, so I think that those answers can be found. I think for me, every time I've been in the darkest places of my life, whenever I was a kid, I always tell people, my mom did a lot of wrong stuff, but what she did every single Sunday was put us in that church. What we did every single Wednesday night was we went to that church. And so we spent that time with God. And it says in the Bible, if you plant the seed at an early age, even if they get away from it, they'll come back like the prodigal son. And so that would be the first thing I would say is make sure that you spend that time with God and prioritize that above everything. Don't put your husband or wife first. Don't put your kids first, because if you're putting them first, you're always going to be sacrificing something else. But if you put God first, it's the only way in your life that you're going to be able to go out there and be the best you can be for everybody else. Secondly, I would say there's times outside of God, and, a lot of people say put God first, put your family next and yourself last, or others next and yourself last. I think there's times in your life when you do have to say, hey, in order for me to be the best version of me, I got to be selfish right now. I got to spend some time with me. Whenever I went to Biggest Loser, it was a huge thing for me to learn, hey, you're taking time away from your friends, your family, your career, your partners that were in trailer choir with me. We went from making over $1 million a year to that year making pretty much nothing. I had to file bankruptcy after that because I went a whole year without making any money. You know what I mean? You don't get paid to be on The Biggest Loser. So, so I had to take that. I had to be selfish for that little bit. But if I didn't, I probably wouldn't still be alive.
Yep.
And people say, oh, well, God might have gave you a way. I'm like, what if that was the way that God gave me? He said, hey, here's a chance for you to go lose the weight. I think so many people are like, I'm just waiting for God to come save me, and he might be giving you ways every single day. I always think about that story about they're talking about the man on the roof in the flood. He's like, well, I sent a boat, a helicopter, a hot air balloon, and everything else, and you didn't take any of them,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that would be my second piece of advice is there's going to be times in your life when you have to be a little bit selfish, when you have to put yourself first with the intent. So don't just to be like, I want to do this because it's for me. The intent is so that if I do this, I become a better person for all those people around me. If I quit drinking alcohol and I got to go spend some time in rehab, I'm going to become a better person for my kids, for my wife, for my friends, for my mom, for my dad, for all these people around me. Same thing with whatever your addiction is. Most of the time it's getting away from an addiction. And I think a lot of people look at addictions like just drugs and alcohol, but there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's porn, there's your phone. For me, it was food. Food was my addiction, so, I think there's so many things that we have to take some time and spend some time on ourselves. So that would be number two. And then number three, I think, be forgiving. I would hope that my kids would always know, like, hey, there's going to be people that are going to do you wrong in this world. It doesn't mean that you got to spend the rest of your life with them or go and be their best friends again, but be willing to forgive those people, especially if they come to you and ask for your forgiveness. I've forgiven people in my life that didn't ask for my forgiveness, and I feel great about it. They're still awkward if we ever see each other in a situation, but I'm completely healed of any situation that we had. There's been a couple of artists that I got them their record deals, and they're major, major artists. And I was supposed to be part of everything they did. And of course, it wasn't even necessarily them. It was when the record label come on board and the bigger powers that be came on board. They said, why would we give Vinny a piece? Because I didn't have contracts in place. I didn't have these things. I just thought, hey, I love these people and I believe in them. So I'm going to get behind them and I'm going to introduce them to people and I'm going to give them get record deals. And we're talking about two of these artists are major, major artists that are on the radio, that are on every award show and everything today. If they tell their story in private when I'm there, they're going to talk about, hey, if it wasn't for Vinny, I couldn't be there. But when they tell their story on the camera, it's, oh, yeah, I got the record deal and this happened and that happened, So I was able to forgive those people, even though they didn't ask me for forgiveness. I was able to look at them and say, you know what? I think that they were so scared in the moment to fight against the bigger powers, on which we talked about earlier. If you open your mouth about God and, religion and politics on the internet, you're going to have some people hate you. I think they were too scared to stand up and say, hey, wait a second. If it wasn't for Vinny, I wouldn't be here. So, have that room for forgiveness in your heart, whether it was a stepdad, a mom, a brother, a cousin, whatever it was they did to you. There's a good chance that however they hurt you, they were probably hurt that same way. And I know that's hard to, think about sometimes because, I know I've known people in my life that have been sexually abused, that have been mentally abused, that have been physically abused, all these different things. And honest to God, every time when they were able to forgive the person that did them wrong is when they really were truly able to start healing. So just have that forgiveness in your heart. Be open to it. I'm not telling you that you're going to forgive them tomorrow, that you're going to get over it tomorrow. It was the Willie Nelson song. It's not something you get over. It's just something you get through. I think we all have those moments, whether it's losing a loved one in our life or if it's losing, a battle with drugs, alcohol, sexuality, whatever it is. Every one of us are going through those same temptations. Even Jesus had those same temptations. He just did a lot better than the rest of us. But yeah, I think that would be what I'd say is just, put God first, make sure you take time for yourself and then, be forgiving.
No, I love that. Love that, brother. And thank you so much for being on today, man. When I think about your name, Bigg Vinny, I think about, big in faith, big in heart, and, just big in love, the way you spread the love out there with so many different people. So thank you for being a, amazing friend. And, thank you for doing what you're doing out in the world. Just know that it never goes unnoticed, even in the times that it feels like it's going unnoticed. Know that you have a tremendous ripple effect out there. And that's why I want to give you the opportunity to, share with anybody out there how people can work with you, how people can follow you, and how they can connect with Bigg Vinny out in the world.
Yeah. So many different ways to work with me. Obviously, come spend some time at my resort, get away from all that. It's the Buffalo River Resort, TN.com. So, come spend some time there. That's one of the ways you can just, I guess it's working with me. It's just supporting what I do. Hire me for your parties. Let me come in and do your annual Christmas party. Let me come and be the host of the auctioneer, the the band, let me do all those things, because I promise you we're going to put on a good time and make your people have fun, whether it's your employees, whether it's your family, whether it's, whatever it is. If it's your city and they're having a big old city party, let me come be the entertainment. Let me help you put your events together. I do that all across the country as well. I do everything from county fairs to big old festivals. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff I've done. I put together these big old festivals that have thousands of people at them, and help them organize and help them, pick the right entertainment so they don't go out there and waste money on entertainment that's not going to sell any tickets, all that kind of stuff. That's a big deal for me. And then, gosh, once I get this roofing company, let me come do your roof. So,
you
can find me Bigg Vinny Official. That's BIGG. I'm too big for 1G. Bigg Vinny Official. Big VINNY Official is all of my social media. So whether it's TikTok, if it's Instagram, if it's Facebook, if it's my website's biggvinnyofficial.com, all those are ways that you can contact me. You can stay in touch with me. I do all my own social media, and I do a mediocre job at it. So I can preach it all day long. I got to be better about it too. I got several artists that I'm working with now that I'm starting to I started a management company about a year ago to help some of these younger artists not come to Nashville and get taken for everything their Uncle John had. So that does happen. And I started saying, look, you don't need to go do this. You don't need to go do that. There's no use in spending money on this. But I've been able to, bring those people in and start helping them as well. So we got a plethora of talent. And I guess the final thing just be, just so you know, whenever I do book talent across this country, I book everybody from, members of NSYNC, Grammy Award winners, all the way down to people that are getting on the stage for the first time playing their songs. So there's nobody that I can't get to, that I can't, figure out how to get in there and work with. Just the budget's change the bigger you go. So.
Yep. No, I love that, brother. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. We appreciate you having here. Appreciate you spending your time with us, donating our time with us, and just delivering so much value to the audience. And if you're watching this live or you're watching this on the rerun, just make sure to drop some love here for Bigg Vinny, and then give him that follow. He's a guy that you want to have in your corner, a guy that you want to follow in live.
No, I appreciate y'all. Just the final thing, man, I really appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to come on. Andy, I want to get to know you better. I think I followed the right account on Instagram. Is it like a black and white symbol?
Probably, yeah. I'll definitely reach out to you, and I can't wait to do that too,
I want to make sure we get to know each other better too. And David has already added to my life and been a great friend. I think we've both been there for each other. We're starting to do more and more events together. So if you are watching this and you're looking at David or Andy here and you're like, man, are these guys I want to work with? I can tell you from my experience with David, Andy, I'm still getting to know you, but I don't know if I've met a more honest, straightforward dude than David. He will tell you exactly what he thinks about anything, and he doesn't hold back on it. And I always appreciate that. I always want to know where somebody stands on anything we're doing, because I'd much rather have that than waste 2 weeks sugarcoating something that I don't ever have any intentions of doing. And I learned that from the music business as well. But David is that guy. He will tell you exactly what he thinks, and he won't sugarcoat it, but he'll treat you with respect. So.
No, I appreciate it, man. We'll love you, brother. And appreciate you being on the show, and everybody watching. We will catch you next week, same time, same channel, same Insurance Syndicate Group, with another episode of Ask the Expert.